Telegram.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is dreary and cold and a little damp, and that is just inside this building. You should see the outside.
Did not know where you were going.
It's dark,
We're thinking about putting on a roof one of these days.
but we're in a good mood anyway, because this is the Temple Daily Telegram Sports Podcast. I'm Josh. Greg's sitting over there,
Hello.
and I'm pointing to Daniel now.
Hello.
And Marcus is over there.
Howdy.
We were just watching the Astros give up another lead in Game 4 of the ALCS. We're also talking a little basketball too, but that's for another podcast, the one that we don't record. Right now, it's all about high school football, and let's get to it. Week 8, here we are. Colleen Ellison at Temple, undefeated Temple, rolling right along. Starting to get more votes in the AP 6A rankings too, which is interesting.
Or just that one guy who's voting for Temple is
Yeah.
moving up in the order each week, maybe.
Right, yeah,
who
I'm not
knows?
sure how it
Who
works.
knows? We don't have a vote
Yeah, we don't.
for some reason.
We don't have anything.
We don't even have a roof.
Right. Colleen at Belton and Waco at Cleveland Shoemaker is 12-6A on Friday night, and Thursday night is Hewitt Midway at Harker Heights. Moving on to District 5, 4A Division 1, Gatesville at China Spring. Kind of a must-win game there for both teams, particularly Gatesville. In District 14, 4A1, Lampasas is at Liberty Hill. District 8, 4A2, Lorena at Salado. We'll talk about that district a little bit because that one kind of seems up for grabs so far. District 10, 3A1, Cameron Yo at Academy, and Troy at Rockdale. Another couple interesting games there, especially that last one. District 8, 3A2, Hamilton at Rogers. District 8, 2A1, Bruce Oletti at Riesel. I was waiting for Marcus to sound.
I got nothing on that one.
When you mentioned up for grabs, I was wondering if that pertained to Marcus's curly fries over there.
Right.
I think it does.
Well, he's moving away to eat some, so they must not be. They're off limits to the rest of us.
They're just regular fries.
Oh, okay.
They're not curly.
I didn't want to pay the
Yeah,
extra
boo.
19 cents.
Yes. Also in 8-2A1, Bosqueville at Moody. 13-2A1, Holland at Rosebud Lot. 13-2A2, Fremont at Granger. A nice matchup there.
Big game.
Big one.
District leaders going at it. TAPS Division 4, District 3. Shriner St. Paul at Central Texas Christian. The Lions opening up district there, undefeated, and playing a team that hasn't won yet. TAPS 6-man Division 2, District 2, Victoria Victory Faith at Holy Trinity Catholic, and in non-district, Buckholtz at LaGrange Fayette County Homeschool. That is one team, not a bunch of teams. Idle this week, Copper's Cove, Gerald, and Bartlett.
By the way, you know how sometimes we mentioned that a team has their bye week or they're on
It's
their bye?
idle week.
It's an open date or a bye. I've heard that explained recently. A bye is only like an opening in a bracket that advances you to the next round where you don't have to play. It's technically idle. You're idle. It's your open date,
You're
open
off.
week.
Yeah.
So let's strike that bye reference unless
Yeah.
it's an actual
Did I say
bracketed
bye? Or
bye.
did I say
No, I'm just.
Yeah.
I'm
You
just
said idle.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I thought.
That's just Greg Willie
I know. Just
giving us information that we didn't really ask
yeah.
for.
It's called trivia.
Stay tuned for after this one. You got Greg Willie's great information after. So.
When you leave, just say to the group, idle, instead of bye. I guess.
There we go.
All right, well, like I mentioned, Temple still undefeated this season overall and in District 12 6A. They got Colleen Ellison coming into town on homecoming.
Well, that is their homecoming game, isn't it, Josh?
It is, yes. For whatever that's worth, I mean, a win is still a win and a loss is still a loss in that game. So,
Yeah.
And we don't capitalize homecoming either. It is down. Just
Yeah.
so.
Well, I didn't capitalize
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
story today.
I know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, just
More
saying.
trivia.
Yes.
Sounded like he was
But,
correcting me there
no,
for
no.
a second. Okay, all right.
But the Ellison Eagles,
Can't we all just get along?
they're right now tied for fourth in district with Colleen,
There.
Belton's opponent. And the Eagles are coming off a victory over Shoemaker, which is getting closer and closer every week.
They're going to get one.
Yeah, and this week might be it against Waco, which lost to Harker Heights last week, and Harker Heights hadn't won a game before that one. So, but anyway, Wildcats looking good, and their task is what this week, Greg?
Oh, I think to play a lot like they did last week, really. I mean, Temple, people were kind of concerned going into that game at Killeen. You had a Thursday night game coming off the emotional, exhausting win over Belton, triple overtime, and you had a short week of practice. You had to go on the road, and Temple handled it really well. And, really outplayed Killeen from the beginning, and still made a lot of mistakes in that game and still won by 3 touchdowns on the road against, I'd say, a likely playoff team. So that was a good win for Temple. Defense bounced back really well in that game. They only allowed 200 yards after giving up well over 500 the previous week. So it was a big game for Temple's defense. And then the offense was there too. I mean, Jared Wiley, 4 touchdown passes. Montavian Carlisle had a big game, 3 touchdowns against Killeen. As for the game against Ellison, which I believe you asked me about leading off.
I think I did.
Yeah. I'm just taking the long route to getting to that. But you have an Ellison team that 3-4 doesn't sound great, but 3-2 in district with 3 games left. As of today, they're in a playoff position. They're tied with Killeen for that last spot. And the thing about Ellison, they've beaten the 3 teams at the bottom of the district, so they've taken care of kind of who they're supposed to. You look at who they have left, though: Temple, Belton, and Killeen. They won't be favored to beat Temple or Belton. Killeen's kind of a coin toss type game right now. Of course, that's more or less a neutral site, Killeen and Ellison. So they might have to pull off an upset to make the playoffs. They lost to Coppers Cove earlier, which I think really hurts them.
Sure.
I think if they'd won that Cove game, they'd like their chances a lot better right now. But the thing that's kind of concerning to Temple about Ellison is just their team speed. I mean, Scott Stewart, the Temple coach, really raved about how fast Ellison is. He said they're by far the fastest team Temple's seen. I looked up some video, and I think it's legit, especially offensively. I mean, defensively, they've given up over 400 yards a game, so it's not quite translating on that side. But offensively, they've got some serious dudes, and their quarterback, Breezion Spiller, he sounds fast to me, and he is on video, too. I mean, he's very dynamic, great change of direction. Like, guys think they have him lined up for a tackle, and he just jump cuts laterally, and there's nothing there to tackle. And then he's got a good arm. He's left-handed, which the video I've seen, it's like because he's rolling to the left, you don't expect him to be able to throw the ball 50 yards downfield, but because he's left-handed, he can do it.
Yeah.
And he's a good guy, and they've got speed at the receivers. Ty Hill's a good running back, and they're pretty balanced on offense. So I think they can dent Temple's defense a little bit. It's just I don't think Ellison's defense is good enough to stop Temple. So
there's that.
Yeah.
I think we've seen the last, with Killeen last week, and even a couple other.
They were giving up 11 points a game, Killeen was, and they got shredded by Temple.
Do these teams have enough?
Right.
Really. But what you mentioned, Temple making mistakes. They had a few turnovers, right, in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Jared Wiley. He didn't have any interceptions in the first 4 games of the season. He's got 3 in the last 2.
Yeah.
Now he's still got 21 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, which is pretty good. But and then Anthony Jackson had a big game, but he lost a fumble.
Yeah.
And a lot of penalties too.
And that was kind of the thing against Belton too.
Yeah.
I mean, and they've you don't want to say gotten away with it, but they've obviously done enough to overcome those. But eventually, those things are going to have to get cleaned up, no matter who you're playing.
Yeah.
Especially if you want to, as we're getting closer here to the playoffs.
Well, and
with Midway
in 2 weeks, and I don't think at Coppers Cove will be an easy game.
Yeah.
So they're going to have to clean. I mean, some penalties don't hurt you,
right?
But if you're driving and then you take that bad holding penalty, I mean, they had a Quentin Johnston, the receiver. He was actually held without a touchdown catch for the first time all season. Well, he had a long touchdown. It got called back because of a skirmish behind the play where Temple had a wide receiver, Keon Johnson, ejected from the game, even though he got his own helmet ripped off. The refs said they didn't see that, and all they saw was the guys kind of getting in each other's face.
Yeah.
So, in a closer game, you can't have something like that.
Right.
But they were up probably 4 touchdowns at the time. So,
Yeah. But
yeah.
So I mean that Temple's rolling right along, doing what they're supposed to do. Belton has a chance to get back to doing what it needs to do after a bye week. They were off, or not a bye week. Idle.
Yeah, they were idle. They
Yes.
weren't doing anything. They didn't even practice.
No, they were just sitting around. No, they were off last Friday, and they get right back to it against Killeen, which gave the Tigers a game last year. It was 28-21. Connor Carruthers scored with 31 seconds left in that one to lift Belton ahead, and that also came after Belton was off.
Yeah.
So 2 years in a row, and it might be 3 years in a row actually that Belton and Killeen have scored off after Belton's off week.
You think it's benefiting Belton to get these teams after they've
Yes,
played Temple?
I do.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think Belton's coaching staff realizes that too. I mean, the Belton's schedule kind of favorable for the Tigers in that way because they're following every single opponent,
Yeah.
Temple opponent through district.
Yeah.
And we know how Temple plays, physical. And, they'll knock a team down and
Yeah.
leave them
And they'll
wobbly a little bit.
They'll give Belton a good blueprint
Oh, yeah.
for what works against
Right.
each opponent.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Belton's had 2 weeks to prepare for Killeen now too, and they're just going to look to get right back at it. Like we said last week, this game is important for both teams as far as playoff seeding. It's important for Belton because it thinks it can still get a piece of that district championship.
No doubt.
They have Ellison, Waco, and Midway after this game. Midway's the season finale. They're also wanting to move closer to clinching a playoff spot. Just first things first, right? So,
And they already know they're Division One, so
Right.
you can start to really scout hard on the teams you might
Yeah,
face
yeah.
first or second
right,
round.
and depending on where that other team that they're going to play in the playoffs finishes in their district, Belton could get another home game in the first round of the playoffs. That'll be a third straight year. So, talking with head coach Sam Skidmore this week, Belton's just kind of going about its business. He doesn't feel the offense is going to lose any rhythm after being off for a couple weeks or for a week and a half or so, and they're just looking to keep on going. Killeen, we talked about them last week with their running back Darius Marshall. He was limited in the running game by Temple, but he still caught a couple touchdown passes. Skidmore was really high on him, talking about him last week, and we talked about Killeen's defense last week as well. Big up front, pretty good, I guess, against the run usually. But
Temple kind of makes
slows them a
you
little
guard
bit.
the whole field,
Right.
which I think.
And Belton wants to
Belton
do that
will too.
I mean, Belton
Yeah.
will spread them out.
No, the difference is
Also-
Belton not quite as dangerous as Temple at the running back position. You'd have to
Not
say.
yet. Not yet. Yeah.
But they still have a good
Yeah.
running game. But
Yeah.
it's not Dejon Overton and Anthony Jackson
Right.
who are spreading you out.
Yeah.
But still.
Yeah, Belton
Belton's
goes about it
capable.
with 4 or 5 different receivers,
Yes.
and Carruthers throwing it to them.
Yeah.
In an up-tempo
Pretty good matchup.
offense. But and speaking of Belton's running game, and that's something the Tigers really want to get going. I think the 2 running backs have only combined for somewhere around 500 and plus yards, maybe a little bit more this season. So that's obviously something. And Belton's actually been more of a run-first team in years past, but Carruthers just kind of gone off these last couple games, and they've kind of gone with that. But the weather's supposed to be bad, so who knows there. But Belton just getting back on the winning track after their idle week. Yeah, and it is also Belton's homecoming game.
Josh is looking
Homecoming
forward to
with
that.
a lowercase h.
45-minute halftime, maybe.
No,
Hopefully.
it should still be 28. That is the UIL rule.
Okay. For your sake, we sure
Still
hope so.
28. All the festivities take place prior to
Yeah.
kickoff.
Make sure you get the whole homecoming court in your game story.
Yes, and kickoff is supposed to be 7:30. 7:30 sharp with the kickoff.
Central.
Yes, our time. Anyway, Daniel, stats.
All right, got some more stats for you this week. So, like I said last week, get out your pen and paper. Here we go. Greg, I'm going to let you just get ready because you're
Okay.
probably going to have some corrections for me. You always do. I appreciate it.
Maybe
We'll talk more about your-
side comments. I don't
Maybe.
know about
Here we
corrections
go.
per
I don't know.
se. Okay.
Things go a little hostile this
All right.
week for us all. So, no. All right, so let's see.
Hey, just because I
It's
took
just because only one of us has a double cheeseburger.
That's
I
We're all
took
just
the
jealous.
picks lead, y'all don't have to get hostile.
Oh, that's
Ooh,
true.
Oh, hey.
all right. So your area rushing leaders heading into week 8. Ryland Turner out of Central Texas Christian and he leads the area rushers with 1,423 yards rushing. Also leads the area in touchdowns with 22. Next up with a touchdown lead is Zach Herbachik, the sophomore out of Troy. 15 touchdowns on the season. Also second in yards rushing for the season, 1,226. Greg, your hand is up.
Could we call him the Trojan's horse?
We probably could.
Okay.
We got Trojan's horse, and we got Anthony Jackson, Action Jackson.
Action Jackson.
Correct? So
yeah, there you go.
we're just coming up with the nicknames. It only took us 8 weeks, but we're getting there. Nathan Quattlebaum out of Bruceville Eddy. He's the third in the area, 734 yards rushing, 6 touchdowns on the season. Connor Cook,
His nickname is Quaddlebaum.
Quaddle, it's just unique. There we go. Greg, anything?
Well, I was going to say maybe battling Dean Blondmonville for best name by an area running back this year. Proceed, Daniel.
There we go. I just have the numbers for you. I don't have the good outlooks.
All right.
Connor Cook out of the Salado rushing machine over there, 718 yards on the season, 9 touchdowns. Lane Dack over at Holy Trinity, 640 yards, 9 touchdowns. Ryan Pickett, for Granger. He's a big reason why the Lions, what is that now? How many wins in a row? Like 7 maybe? Or maybe
Granger.
They lost their
6?
first one.
Granger?
6.
So 6 in a row. So yeah, the Lions are rolling. Let's see. Try to find my spot. He has got 607 yards rushing, 11 touchdowns on the season. Clay Cooper out of Holland, 586 yards, 6 touchdowns. Action Jackson, Anthony Jackson over at Temple, 550 yards, 6 touchdowns. Dejon Overton, again out of Temple, 523 yards, 7 touchdowns. And then to wrap it up, how do you say that, Josh? Out of Salado, Rook Brown. Rook Brown with, 516 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns on the season.
Blondmonville, 2 letters longer than Quaddlebaum.
Okay.
Also, I covered a Salado game earlier this year, and Rook Brown, he's also Salado's kicker, and he scored 2 long touchdown runs, like 50, 60-yard runs. He happened to miss the extra point after both of those runs because I'm thinking he was just out of breath and tired.
Yeah.
Because on all the other touchdowns they scored, he made the extra point.
Probably just has a.
I'm just saying.
Interesting.
More great inside trivia from Greg Willie.
Thank you.
Can't get it anywhere else, folks, right here. All right, moving on to your top passers in the area. We've talked about him a lot this season. Connor Carruthers out of Belton. He's passed for over 1,582 yards passing, 18 touchdowns on the season. Jared Wiley up next out of Temple, 1,398 yards passing, 21 touchdowns. Braden Brashear out of Cameron Yo, 1,211 yards, 12 touchdowns. Aaron Rodriguez out of Gerald, 973 yards passing, 12 touchdowns. He's a big reason why Gerald's kind of starting to turn things around this season. Jace Robinson for the defending champ Rockdale Tigers, 786 yards passing, 11 touchdowns. Thomas Rhodes for Granger, 764 yards passing, 8 touchdowns. Riley Cosper for Troy, 734 yards, 4 touchdowns. And then to wrap it up, Braden Davis for CTCS, 619 yards with 6 touchdowns. So a lot of numbers, easy to get confused. We do our best.
To get confused? Yes, we do.
A little bit, but we try to keep people up to date. Greg, side comments before I go on to the top receivers.
I was just going to say someone's got to catch those balls that the quarterbacks are throwing.
There we go. So
Who would that be?
we have got, first off, we're going to start you with top receiving yards players. Quentin Johnson for Temple. You've heard about him pretty much ever since the opening week of the season. You're hearing about him today and going into week 8. 610 yards receiving, 12 touchdowns on the season. As far as I know, the only receiver in the area with double-digit receiving touchdowns. Up next is Kadrian Hammond out of Cameron Yo, 486 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns.
And an incredible yards per catch average, it looks like.
Yeah, it's looking
16 catches, 486 yards.
Right. So do we have
over 30 or something?
Do we have a stat guy? I don't know if we have a stat guy. It'd be good for the intern we can bring in. All right. So then, moving on, Anthony Brown for Belton, 459 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns. Brady Shelton, the do-it-all man out of Holland, 436 yards, receiving 5 touchdowns. Casey Coring out of Rogers, 431 yards, 4 touchdowns. Kobe Young, Cameron Yo, 410 with 3 touchdowns. Brett Malden, the tight end for Academy, 406 yards, receiving 7 touchdowns for the Bumblebees. And then kind of wrapping up, Denver Holman for Belton, 375 yards receiving, 4 touchdowns on the year.
Awesome.
Great stuff, Daniel.
I'm going to go grab an oxygen tank if that's okay with y'all. So
What are you gonna do with it?
I don't know. I was thinking about using it, but we'll see. I don't know.
Great.
That'd be awesome. Check it out. Gatesville and China Spring. That seems like a must-win game.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it earlier. It's like, if you look at this district, one of those two teams probably is going to miss the playoffs, and whoever wins this one probably makes the playoffs.
In a 5-team district, right?
Yeah, because I think China Springs a little bit down this year. They have a new coach. It's still a Bell, but it's just a different Bell. So they're kind of still finding their way. But Gatesville's kind of struggled a little bit more than they probably would like to. But I think it'll be an intriguing matchup, and I don't know who to pick.
It kind of seems like, I mean, I know Gatesville had planned to use a bunch of guys both ways this year, but it seems like it's having a bit of an effect on the defense. Maybe I'm not sure how many of those guys are, back and forth.
Right.
But it seems like that defense is struggling a little bit this year, and it might be having an effect on the offense in some way. I'm not sure, but
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
Because Coach Kyle Cooper out of Gatesville, he likes to have just guys that start purely on offense, purely on defense. But I don't think he's got the numbers this year and the talent to do that all across the board. But so he's got to put his best players out there and give them the best chance. But he definitely tries to get them as much rest as possible. And I think he's still going with the 2-quarterback system.
at least 2, right? Yeah.
Yeah, at least 2. Let's try and confuse the defense that way. But.
Right. But the other matchup in that district this week is Stephenville at Waco La Vega. Stephenville opened with a 21-14 win over China Spring. So, that there's not a lot of wiggle room in that district.
There's no wiggle room in the district, really.
Yeah.
It's like,
Brownwood is off. That's who Gatesville lost to last week. But another district, more teams, but about the same amount of drama is District 8482, and Salato's knee deep in that one at 1-1, and they're playing Lorena, which has been state ranked this year. I don't know if they're still state ranked this week or not, but Lorena's 2-1, visiting Salato, and Salato handled Lorena pretty easily last year, but
That was
Salato's
last year.
definitely not the same team, and Lorena looks a little bit better too. So another big matchup in the area this week.
Well, and Lorena has a real balanced offense. Like,
Yeah.
they were good at running and passing,
Yeah.
and obviously Salato's like 98% run. That might just be like Salato can get an early lead and hold on to the ball. They've got they got a chance to win the game for sure at home, but they can't let Lorena jump all over them because they score a lot of points and they can do it multiple ways. That I'm not sure that's a must-win for Salato, but it kind of starting to seem pretty important though.
yeah, but also if you look at that district, I mean, it's a 7-team district. We're only 3 games into it. Some have only played 2 games, and everybody already has a loss.
True.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to beat each other up apparently.
And only
in this
one
district,
team
so-
hasn't won a game, which is Mahia, right? So
Right.
it's there's a
And
lot
they
of-
may not win a game,
right.
but
Yep.
who knows? But
Oh, and also Salato has a good win over Connolly, which looks
Exactly.
like a pretty good team. So they went to Madisonville and won. So
Yeah, Connolly's 2-1 in district.
Yep.
Madisonville's 2-1.
yeah, so you can't take a Lorena win for granted here.
Yeah. Robinson 1-1. Robinson beat Salato, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so, so that district's shaping up to look like it's going to go down to the wire there. 10-3-A1, the 2 matchups this week mentioned. 2 matchups in the area at least. Yo at Academy and Troy at Rockdale. That last one, Troy at Rockdale. We saw what Cameron Yo had to kind of pull away from Troy a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
And I'm assuming Troy's going to give Rockdale the same amount of trouble. And that one looks like it's going to be a pretty good matchup as well.
Yeah, I think if Troy can play a complete game, like all 4 quarters, then I think they could beat Rockdale. I think they will beat Rockdale if they play a complete game, because I think that's kind of been their problem, is like in each of their games they've just had one bad quarter or one bad, maybe bad half, and just maybe one bad series in their losses,
Yeah.
And Rockdale, they're young and experienced, and I think Jeff Miller would be the first to tell you, that he's kind of surprised at their record right now, that they're actually doing as well as they are. But that being said, you win a state title game, all those kids learn how to play real quick. So you lose some kids, other kids just fill those shoes. But Troy's going down to Rockdale, new stadium over there. It'll be the first time Troy's played in it. So
Yeah.
Any chance Rockdale could be looking ahead to a certain game coming up next week?
Yeah, the Tigers could be, and Rockdale started open district playing two of the worst teams in that league. And really had no contest in either one of those.
They did not have a Zach Urbacek that's ready to run the ball
Troy,
30 times.
They've already played Academy, which obviously we've seen they're much improved so far. And
Yeah, definitely. And I'm kind of in my opinion, giving the edge to Troy because I've seen them play a couple of times this season. But that's kind of the difference maker in my opinion. Rockdale, lost some key pieces, last year to graduation from that state title team, but they're still really solid. But they just, they like you said, they started off playing, Manor New Tech, and then, Lago Vista, excuse me, and two of the, I think we can all agree that the two bottom teams in that district. So they're. They haven't seen the rest of what 10-3A has to offer yet, whereas, Troy, they started off with Yo, and then they played, last week they played Academy, which is much improved, and
they beat Gerald.
Beat Gerald the week before that, so, they're already kind of in the thick of it, so they're playing well. That defense is nothing to shrug at. They're impressive. The linebackers are all over the place. The defensive backs really do a great job of just wrapping up receivers when they are able to make catches. And then, on offense, like we already talked about, they just hand it off to Zach Urbacek. That kid can make cuts and, find the seam and just find holes, and like no one else that I've seen so far this season. And then the passing game, they always want to continue to develop that. But, when they need a big pass on a 3rd and long or something like that, Riley Cosper has kind of proven that he can be that guy to make that pass when they need it. So it'll be interesting. It's not going to be an easy test for either team. Hopefully Rockdale isn't looking too far ahead to that certain game we were referencing, but they got to take care of business with Troy, right now. But again, I would give it to Troy just solely because Troy has played some of the tougher teams in that district. Rockdale, this is really going to be their first test of this district to start the season.
Yeah, it looks like the Tigers have mostly settled on Robinson at quarterback. I know Ross Lott plays a little bit too, but I think Robinson's a sophomore, and I believe he's a lefty too. They look like they've settled on him for the most part. And the thing about the Tigers, though, those playmakers, they kind of just, they show up. It might be one guy one week and a couple guys the next. So Troy's defense is definitely going to be having to keep up with that.
It's also, I think, the difference between this game being at Rockdale on fast turf, especially with all the rain we're having. Like if this game was at Troy on grass, it would have the potential to get kind of a slow, muddy track maybe, which could slow down some of Rockdale's skill guys. But the fact that it's at Rockdale on turf and it's not going to be a sloppy, muddy game could be to Rockdale's advantage. But
But and Yo,
or it could be to
Yo at Academy. I think that I don't know if that site has changed. Not that I've seen yet. That one.
They moved some. I think they moved some middle school games, but that's probably just so the field didn't get all messed up before varsity, right? Yeah. It'll be wet though.
Yeah,
sure
definitely.
Be wet.
But Yo's looking to move to 3-0 in district ahead of next week's rivalry game, and Academy's looking to avoid a 2-game losing streak after winning their first 2 in district.
If Academy has any shot, I shouldn't say it like that, but in all honesty, if they have any shot against Cameron Yo, even at home, they've got to do a better job of just holding on to the ball. They came out that first possession against Troy last week, threw an interception on the first play of the game, threw another interception in that first half, and then had, I think, about 3 fumbles throughout the game. So they really not their best game as far as holding on to the football execution wise. They're still rotating at quarterback there between Jerry Cephas and Ryan White, although Ryan White by far had the worst game probably of the season last week. Jerry Cephas got the start in the second half, and he played the entire second half. But you can still expect them to kind of rotate, and that's what Paul Williams likes, the fact that if one has a bad game, you can put in the other, and you'll probably get production. But they gotta clean up execution. They got to hold on to the ball, because Cameron Yo, even when you do execute and hold on to the ball, they still make life hard on you.
Yeah, that's kind of what Temple does in 6A.
Yeah.
They might have their share of mistakes, but if the other team they're playing makes mistakes,
Pounce.
yeah. Good night. Anything else from that district?
We're just looking at Academy, what they have left. I mean, I don't think anyone thinks Academy's going to beat Rockdale or Cameron Yo. Those are tall orders, but you look at Academy with the 2 district wins already. They're at Gerald next week. If they can win that game, finish 3-3 in district, that might be good enough to get the last playoff spot, because it's not going to Maine or New Tech, and it's probably not going to Lago Vista. Academy already has wins over both of those teams. Thinking 3-3 might be good enough for that 4th spot, but Academy's going to have to earn it at Gerald next week,
Right.
and that'd be a pretty good deal for Paul Williams.
Yeah.
Coach Paul Williams
Yes.
at Academy,
Yeah.
first year.
Academy's first year head coach,
Right.
Paul Williams. Yeah.
That'd be a big deal for him to get Academy into the playoffs after a little bit of a drought, and
Yeah.
that's all I have to say about
Yeah,
that.
that's true.
It'd be a big deal for Coach Amos Davison out of Gerald to get in the playoffs too. So, and they're much improved now too. So, I mean, that's going to be an interesting game to watch next week.
Right.
We're getting ahead of ourselves, obviously, but
Yeah.
I mean, you have to.
And think about it, we're already looking ahead to that game, and we haven't even talked about the Battle of the Bell yet.
Yeah, right.
The battle of the what?
Yeah,
What is that?
they should call it the Battle of the Milam, because we're in Bell County over here, and that game's in Milam.
Can you ring a Milam?
You can do whatever you want with a Milam.
Rogers back in action after being off last week in their opening district. Bruceville Eddie is going to want to rebound after losing that one late last week, right against Italy. Holland is 6-1 now overall and 3-0 in district. They're playing Rosebud Lot, looking to stay unbeaten in 13-2A1. And then in 13-2A2, we'll touch on this, I think, before we sign off. Bremont at Granger. Granger is 6-1 overall, winning 6 straight, outscoring opponents 229-70, and they are 1-0. The Lions are 1-0 in district after a 28-7 win last week. Bremont is 1-0 in district after a 37-0 victory, and Bremont Tigers, right?
Tigers,
yeah. 4-3 overall. If this were a few years ago, I'm not sure,
No.
if Granger would have had much of a chance. Because Bremont, what was it, like 4 state titles?
3 in a row, I think,
something.
Yeah, they had some
But,
kid named Richard Paul, who may still be scoring touchdowns.
Yeah.
Right, but right now, this year, Granger, this is a huge game. It's probably the biggest game they've had over there in a few years for sure.
Yeah, I talked to
Because it's not when they play Bartlett anymore.
No,
No.
well, not right now.
No. I went over there last week for a story, talked to Granger head coach Walt Brock, and we were kind of just chatting, and he told me, he's like, if we can take care of business to open district, which the Lions did, and if Bremont gets the win in week 1, like they were expected, and they did, both of them going 1-0 into that game, he said that could be possibly the biggest game over at Granger in the past 10 years. He said that it's going to be a good one. They're doing a lot of good things over there. The offense is flowing. They've got a lot of ways they can attack you. That's kind of their bread and butter. They got a lot of different ways they can line up. They just like to throw as many different looks at you as you can. He wants to keep people's head on a swivel. And then on defense, they're just real tight up front, and they really just limit you. They may give up a 2 or 3, maybe 5-yard play, but whenever a defensive player wraps someone up, it ends there. They don't worry about giving up extra yardage afterwards, and they're a complete unit. There's not a lot of holes over there, but should be a good one. I know Granger wants to continue that winning streak, but probably the toughest test that they've faced so far this season.
Yeah, you got to think win this, and you're about scot-free to the district title in that league.
I say kudos to Walt Brock for playing the game up rather than downplaying it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Let's
go.
It is their biggest game in the regular season, for sure.
Yeah, that is kind of unusual. A lot of coaches will Like
Just another game in district.
Yeah, you talk to if you talk to Miller and Brashear about the Battle of the Bell next week, they'll both kind of try and downplay it a little bit. I mean, they know the meaning of it, but yeah, they'll be like, it's important because it's a district game, and
They don't need to try to drum up more interest to sell tickets to that one.
Yeah, Granger might have to though.
But then again, what else are you doing on Granger on a Friday night? Go to the football game.
Yeah, especially this one. Don't miss this one. And speaking of going to games, enjoy the games that you are choosing to go
Athlete
to.
of the week.
Athlete of the
Have fun.
week
Yeah, athlete of the week.
is.
It's a cross country runner.
It
Oh.
is.
Yeah,
Over
with the regionals coming up on Monday.
So
Kate,
do we have
Gordon at Holland.
yes.
do we have to wait for the cross country podcast to hear about that?
I think that may be coming up in 5 minutes after this one ends. So
Might be a little shorter
My
than
phone
our
is almost out of space after this football podcast.
UMHB
So,
on the road this weekend. Number 2 UMHB.
Yeah,
Bellhaven,
I'm sure that'll be another.
Mississippi.
Yeah, hopefully there's a running clock throughout the entire game this time. Yeah. Crusaders
Pretty dominant so far.
cruising along.
Cruising along.
That defense, it's something else. Like I said, enjoy it this Friday and Saturday because we are.
Read the paper.
Yeah, read the paper, read the website.
read all about it.
Yeah,
And enjoy
fast
those
forward this
homecoming
if you want. Anyway, so long.